Well, good morning again. I'm Leonardo McClarty, president of the Howard County Chamber, and it's my pleasure to come to you again with our 2020 Small Business Series that is being done in collaboration with the Howard County Executive Calvin Ball's office, as well as also the Howard County Economic Development Authority. Certainly, we have been partners on a number of initiative and efforts this year, and happy to be doing something on a more positive note as opposed to having to deal with the coronavirus pandemic and all of the fallout that's stemming from that. And so we've got, I think, a very exciting morning as well as series for you. And so with that, I'm going to actually turn things over to Larry Twill, who is my partner in crime here in economic and business development here in the county, to bring forth some extended remarks, as well as we'll also hear a little bit from our premier sponsor in KCI, as well as from Jennifer Jones in the County Executive Office, as well as a video from County Executive Ball. And so, Larry, we'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, my friend. And thanks to everybody who's joining us today for the County Executive Small Business Series. You know, now this has been a year, and you know, now more than ever, you know, our small businesses are challenged in ways we never could have imagined, and that's why we're bringing you these topics to help you make it through these times. Over the next 4 Wednesdays, you know, we'll be presenting topics on finance, resiliency, innovation, procurement, along with some guest speakers who will share with you, you know, their stories and their challenges and how they met these challenges and turned the challenges into opportunities. And I think you'll really be able to relate to their stories. I'm particularly excited about today's kickoff speaker, Brandon Bellamy, and, you know, just really setting the stage for this entire series that will lend, you know, good practices, good advice, and good resources to our small businesses that are such a big part of our community. Economic Development has launched the Maryland Innovation Center, where we're home to a variety of small business resources and services, and you're going to be hearing more about these throughout the series. And I wanted to just thank the program committee that helped put this together: Jathita Hernandez, Nat Alston, Roger Barnes, and Chuck Bubeck, and the team at the Chamber of Commerce. Also, we work very closely with the County Executive's Office, and a very important partner to both the Chamber and Economic Development, Jennifer Jones. And I'd like to introduce Jennifer Jones to help introduce the County Executive and bring out messages from the County Executive. Jennifer?
Thanks, Larry. And good morning, everyone. Like Leonardo was saying, we are great partners with the Chamber and EDA, and we're really glad to host this seminar with those two organizations. We at the County Executive's Office are very committed to seeing businesses thrive in Howard County, and we believe this information that will be presented today will help businesses learn about access to capital, sustainability and growth, and other issues that are related to thriving in the county. And so we thank you for attending, and I hope that this information will be helpful to your business and that sets you on a path to success. Thank you.
We have a video from our county executive, but looks like we might be having some sound issues here. And so we may end up having to come back and share that with you all just a little bit later. But know that the county executive has actually gone to great lengths to make sure that he lets you know his thoughts on small business. So we're going to try this again and see if it comes through.
Good morning and welcome to the Small Business Seminar Series. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and EDA for this collaboration. As you know, the last several months have been challenging time for our businesses. To help our businesses thrive, financial resources were provided at the federal, state, and local level. In fact, the Paycheck Protection Program was a lifeline for many of our businesses. It was designed to provide a direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on payroll. Unfortunately, many small and local businesses were not able to take advantage of this opportunity for several reasons. Commercial banks tasked with distributing the PPP money gave priority to their existing customers. And since many small businesses lacked a prior relationship with a larger bank, they were not adequately prepared to navigate through this process. In response, this seminar will give businesses a better understanding of the lending process, how to foster a relationship with your lending institution, and what documents you should readily have available when seeking a loan. The seminar will also provide valuable information on a variety of financing options for a startup or small business. Without access to capital, sustainability and growth will not happen. Thank you for attending. We hope the information presented is helpful to your operations going forward and continues to set you on a path to success.
Well, certainly want to, again, extend our thank yous to the County Executive's Office, as well as to Jennifer, who often works right there alongside, with Larry and me on a number of different efforts. And so, Jennifer, thank you for your continued support as well. And so with that, we're going to actually turn things over now to our premier sponsor in KCI Technologies, and certainly pleased to have Chuck Phillips with us from KCI. And Chuck is also another great partner to both the Chamber as well as the EDA as well, in the fact that Chuck is the current chair for the Chamber this year, but he's also on the board of EDA as well. And so certainly Chuck has his hands very involved in the business community in Howard County. So Chuck, we will turn things over to you to say a few remarks and then also to introduce Brandon.
Great. Thanks so much, Leonardo. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I can tell you that KCI is very proud to sponsor this Small Business Summit series. For those of you not familiar with KCI Technologies, we're a multidisciplined engineering firm headquartered right here in Maryland, with local offices in Howard County. We're a proud member of the Maple Lawn business community here in Howard County. And we've been involved in Howard County and been located here for many, many years. We have additional local offices in Maryland, 5 more offices throughout the state, where we service a broad array of public and private sector clients doing engineering work, design services, environmental science, every type of engineering work that you can think of. So we're a one-stop shop resource for that. We also have 50 other offices around the country where we service clients. But we were started and founded right here in Maryland and grew from a small business to a mid-size, and very proud to be members of this business community. We're also very proud that we're a 100% ESOP firm, and that means we're 100% employee owned. Every one of the folks that work for us has a piece of the company, and that is true since 1988 for us. So we're very proud of that, proud of our relationships with the Chamber and with EDA. And I'm proud to be, on both those boards and to be an active member of this business community. As far as I'm concerned, we have one of the best business environments anywhere to be found, and I'm proud to be engaged in that. But enough about KCI. I want to now take this time to introduce our keynote speaker for today. Brandon Bellamy is a passionate, purpose-driven real estate entrepreneur and currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the Velocity Companies. Over the past 30 years, Mr. Bellamy has excelled in real estate investment, real estate development, and private fund management, and he has won numerous industry awards, including the Globe Street Opportunity Award. Mr. Bellamy couples a unique knowledge of market rate and affordable housing development and a superior understanding of financial engineering to impact existing and developing communities. During his tenure at the Velocity Companies, the firm has developed and consulted on projects located in the Mid-Atlantic and Carolinas with an aggregate asset value exceeding $500 million. Mr. Bellamy specializes in municipal financing, tax increment financing, tax-exempt bonds, joint venture transactions and financing, public-private partnership, planned community development and redevelopment, and an innovative way of researching emerging markets. Under Mr. Bellamy's leadership, the Velocity Companies has built a team of professionals that specialize in assisting clients in real estate investment and properly developing activities by analyzing real estate development and conceiving investment opportunities. Driven by their commitment to providing a significant impact in underinvested communities, the Velocity team boldly pursues projects that champion the health and vitality of local economies through meaningful development. Mr. Bellamy is also the founder and principal broker of the Republic Real Estate Group and has been a featured speaker at numerous seminars and underserved communities. Mr. Bellamy remains committed to the communities he develops and the purpose his project serves. And without further ado, Mr. Brandon Bellamy.
Actually, Brandon, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, you're muted.
There we go.
You hear me?
Yep,
Okay,
you're good.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. As I listen to it, it makes me sound like I might know what I'm doing, but that just means I have really good PR people. First of all, I want to thank the Howard County Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to this conversation. I want to thank you, Leonardo and Larry, for reaching out and just asking me to come and share, my opinions and some remarks. I'm excited about what this series can be. Honestly, I've been really looking forward to this conversation. A lot of times I'm giving presentations and it's about, a project or two or three, but entrepreneurship and small business is personal to me. Obviously, I am an entrepreneur, but I believe in small business and entrepreneurship. So being able to just share some ideas is very, very exciting for me. I'm going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about our company, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the sessions that are coming up at a higher level. I want to point out, 3 things that I think are important that might be able to help prepare the group for the sessions that are coming up in the coming weeks, and just share some of my ideas. And I got a couple stories I'm going to tell you, and I'm excited about that. This is a unique way to talk to people. So if I drift off into a Kanye West stream of consciousness rant, somebody just interrupt me. But I like to try to have a good time. I want to get your energy up if I can. And so let me start there. So in order to understand some of my ideas and my opinions and my experiences, I want to try to give you a lens to see it through, which is my personal experience. Understanding me better may help you understand that. So, I'm a Christian first. I'm a businessman second. And at Velocity, the whole idea was for us to be an impact-driven company. We could work on, lots of different kinds of projects, but we want to work on projects that really have significant impact in underinvested communities. We're mission-led, we're biblically motivated. Our idea has always been that community development is something that happens from the bottom up and not the top down. You can't go into someone's community and tell them what they should have. And even if you bought a piece of property and there was a by right use for it, it still doesn't mean that that's what you should do. You want to be a good neighbor. And it's important that you do that. my philosophy on development of anything, whether it's a business or a relationship, a project, by definition, development is to take something from its existing state and help it to achieve its highest potential. That's what the word means. Everything that you do should be for the benefit of something outside of yourself. So if you're going to develop a project that people are going to use, the beneficiary of that project will be people. So in order for you to really have that in proper focus, you have to be thinking the development starts with people. The development that you're going to actually work on is going to be for the benefit of those people. A car isn't a benefit to anyone if no one's driving it. A chair has no purpose if no one sits in it. So development, because it benefits people, is always about and for those people. And so we have a community focus based on that reality. We look for projects that are going to have real impact, that are going to inject economic vitality into an area. It's going to perhaps push a best practice. Sometimes it could be we want to challenge the status quo about going into areas that a lot of times they don't feel comfortable going in. Sometimes it's because they just have a psychological view that those areas won't work. No one's ever gone there before. And that continues to perpetuate the fact that nothing's there. If an area is underinvested, it doesn't have amenities, and you never put anything there, then it can't have anything. And then when it doesn't have anything, it can't get anything. And so sometimes you've got to break that cycle so that people can see that a lot of times empirical data would suggest that these areas could be invested in, they could be profitable as well as do good. But you've got to have that intentionality in mind. So that's kind of who we are as a company. I as a young guy, I got in some trouble when I was young. And one of the reasons I share that when I'm talking to people is because I want people to understand, what I can do, you can do. I have the same desires and fears and the same challenges that everyone else has. So as I tell some of these stories, and I might point out some things we've done, it may sound big to people, and to some it may not. But to those that look at it and say, gosh, I wish I could do that, I want them to know that you can do this. I am exactly like you. That's the reason why I take the time to have these conversations with people. So, I want the small business community to know that, I get it. These are some extremely challenging times. When you look at what's happening with COVID and all the things that we're going through, on top of the daily obstacles of being a business owner and entrepreneur, it's daunting. It is really daunting. I totally understand people feeling, depressed or stressed or dismayed or just not realizing, what's going to happen next and being able to navigate that. And when you start thinking about that in relationship to the sessions that you're going to hear, I want to try to help in this conversation to frame the importance of what you're getting ready to do. We're going to talk about access to capital. You guys are going to have sessions on that. You're going to talk to lenders, and you're going to spend time with people who are going to tell you about lots of details. And there's lots of places to get that information. And I'm available for that. Anyone that wanted to reach out to me after this and talk, really detailed technical approaches to getting capital and accessing capital, I would make myself available for that. But the thing that I want to really talk about is preparing you for it in a more holistic sense. I want you to understand that non-traditional lending is about doing something different than what is usual, right? And that requires being creative. It requires taking the time to take a step back, using your imagination, dedicating yourself to understanding the concepts, and then not being afraid to imagine approaching those problems from a different perspective. And I want you to, that's a mental state. That's a mental state of being. And I want you guys to, I want to talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to tell you a story about how many floors are in 65 feet. And that's the story is going to talk a little bit about the creative, non-traditional lending process. We need to talk about pivoting. You guys are going to have some sessions on that. And that's really about adapting. I think it's a physical thing. It's about getting yourself positioned to be ready for change, to get comfortable being uncomfortable. and what that may mean as it relates to your business. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And resiliency. I really think that is a spiritual concept. It's about your emotional state. And I want to tell you I'll tell you a story about that as well. And it's called, You Can't Have My Sword. And so I want you to understand that while I'm talking at a high level, it's because Warren Buffett says the investments that you make in yourself are the best investments you can make. It has infinite return. It goes with you everywhere you are. And no one can ever take it away from you. So I want to talk about those things, your mind, your physical, your spiritual energy as you come into this. You need to know something about me though. I am a super nerd. I'm a huge comic book geek. I'm a sci-fi guy. I am a movie buff. And so I'm going to make some references. I'm going to say some things and that you need to know that so you'll understand some of the things that I'm going to say. I really believe that entrepreneurs are superheroes. You're heroes. You are problem solvers. You small business owners are gladiators. The resources that are available to all of us in our community are on the backs of and pushed forward by entrepreneurs and small business owners. You guys are the real deal. True altruism requires resource. No matter what you're doing, you have to have resources to help people. And most of these resources are generated by small businesses and entrepreneurs. So it's not just as simple as something that you're doing for yourself. It has so much, it has impact so much further outside of you. And I know you guys are tired. I know that, you're trying to figure out how you're going to cover the light bill. You're trying to figure out how you can market to get more business. Some of your family members are saying, why are you even doing this? Who are you? Why don't you go get a real job? All these things are happening and you're daunted. You're looking at the difficulty of accessing capital when people are telling you all of these things that you have to have and you don't have those things and you're trying to figure out what you can do. And I know that, but I am here to tell you that you made it this far. I want to say congratulations to you guys. The fact that you're here, every day above ground is a good day, every day. And the fact that you're still here pushing forward, it says everything about you. And it continues to give me hope, which is why, I might be talking to you, but you guys are inspiring me. So basically, I want you to dust off your capes and let's go. I need you to know that entrepreneurship is just not about you and your bottom line. And I want to challenge you to think beyond that reality. You have an opportunity to make an even greater impact. Look, we've all struggled to try to make payroll. I say this a lot when I'm talking to people. If you have never stayed up late at night trying to figure out how you're going to pay your staff, then you're not equipped to talk to me. There's nothing that you can say to me if you haven't realized that this is a real thing, right? But the reality is what you're doing isn't just about you and your family and your community. You can actually change the trajectory of lives of people that you impact because of the opportunities that you create for them. It's not just about what you're doing. So as we talk about a couple of these things really quick, I want you to realize that preparation is key. Preparation plus opportunity equals success. And you're getting ready to go into some sessions where people are going to share with you some information. And I want you to have an urgency about that information and intensity about that information. Because basically, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So when you walk into these opportunities, I want you to be thinking, you know what, let me focus, let me pay attention, let me figure out exactly how I can utilize this information to be successful. I don't want you to take it lightly. People are going to share things with you. I want you to really absorb it. You're going to talk a little bit about non-traditional lending. I have a lot of experience in access to capital problems. I'm developing projects in areas where the people are often minority, they're often neglected. And so when you go to lenders, a lot of times they don't want to participate in that. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story about a project I'm working on called Hampton Park. It's a $250 million project. It's inside Prince George's County. It's at the intersection of Central Avenue and I-95. and it's on the inside of the Beltway side. So for those of you who may not know the county, the Beltway is kind of the dividing line. If you're inside the Beltway, that's more of an urban neighborhood. It's often viewed as maybe not as desirable as outside the Beltway. And this particular project, I've been working on it for 10 years before we were able to get it closed. And people would always say, how could you work on something for 10 years? And it was because that's what the community needed. But it was a great project. It was great real estate. When you looked at the empirical data of the project, it made sense. It was comparable to any project in very high affluent areas, Loudoun County, Montgomery County, other places. It was not attracting capital. And it wasn't because the data wasn't there. It was because people had a psychological view that, they didn't want to go there because nothing was there. Back to my previous point. So we were in a point of the project where we had some pre-development capital that the county had made available to us, but we hadn't been able to spend it because we couldn't access any additional capital to move it forward. So I was on my way to a meeting and they were going to take this capital away. And I knew it. And on my way to the meeting, I was in the car with my CFO and we had this huge blowout argument about how many floors are in 65 feet. And this was because what I had planned to do is, instead of walking into this meeting and saying to them, hey, we haven't figured it out, or can you give us more time? I was actually going to ask for something else. I went in and asked for a 115,000 square foot office building. Now, this goes to the traditional lending. In a debt scenario, a lender might say, okay, you want to build a project. We want you to have some skin in the game. We obviously aren't going to fund 100% of what you're asking for. So we'll give you 70% of what it's worth. And we want you to show it with 30% equity. And that's great. It makes sense. We fully understand that. The challenge with that in a lot of markets are that you don't have the ability to access that kind of equity. And even if you were going to do that, projects like this, a large mixed use project, which had residential and potentially hospitality and retail, that was going to be a difficult proposition. My perspective on this was that inside the Beltway, what we didn't need was the county to necessarily give us more capital. What we needed was to be able to support the businesses that were going to be there, and the way they were going to be able to be supported so that they could actually be strong tenants that could support payments of debt is that they needed to be more successful businesses. And the best way to do that was to generate pedestrian traffic. So instead of asking for more capital, I wanted the county to bring an office building inside the Beltway, because there was capital that was available all outside the Beltway. Everybody already wanted to be there. What we needed was pedestrian traffic to help the businesses that would come to this project survive. And that was not looking at the status quo and saying, okay, well, give us, money to build a parking garage. While that's important, that wasn't more important than the pillar of making sure that we'd be able to meet our debt service, right? So it wasn't as simple as just saying, well, here's a basic capital stack. It was about, no, let's figure out another way to prop up this project. Let's look at the problem differently. This happens a lot. You can take concepts that don't necessarily go together and thread them together to make it make sense. By way of example, I say all the time, how did we get to the moon? Civilization had been looking at the moon for millions of years. They didn't have a way to get there. Over time, you learn concepts, and we were able to thread together different patterns and put them together in a way to make a leap of intuition to figure out how to get to the moon. No one had ever been to the moon before. So taking a step back and thinking about what it takes to make banks comfortable and really walking that back and looking at the field in a wide way is one of the best ways to start thinking about being able to access capital or threading together non-traditional sources. It's about being creative. It's about you taking a step back, not ignoring the rules that banks need, but thinking about it from different angles so that you can help that lender solve the problem, because banks need to loan money, but the number one way of making money for a bank is simply not losing money. So this argument that we had, he thought it was crazy for me to go in here and ask for this at the moment that we were about to be attacked and resources were being taken away. I, of course, went in, asked for it. They stopped and thought about it and said, you know, you might have something there. In order for us to support projects inside the Beltway, you probably do need pedestrian traffic. This is the number one way that we can see your project being supported. So instead of them taking resources away, they actually gave us an office building, decided to buy a pad and move headquarter agencies to that location. And that was just an amazing, amazing, amazing opportunity. I thank the county so much for being able to see through that. And that helped us structure financing in a different way, not just because the county was supporting the project, because we could show how tenants would be supported by this additional foot traffic. And that was going to translate into sales, which was going to make those businesses more successful, make the project more successful, and establish us as a strong borrower such that we would be able to meet our debt service. So that was a great opportunity for us. You're going to talk about pivoting. You're going to have some innovation sessions. You're going to talk about pivoting. And I want to hit on that a little bit. And so one of the things that we do at our company is we develop real estate for national retailers. We work for, Dollar Generals and CVS. We work for Wawa. We develop for tenants that are constantly looking for sites. But one of the things that has really been shocking to our business is the change in retail. You can walk through your house right now and order one tube of toothpaste from Amazon and it'll come to your house. People are not shopping. The internet and developing internet resistant businesses in retail has become a huge issue for us in the development space. If you're looking at retail, it's completely transformed. And it was very difficult for us. And we were used to, pushing forward a lot of these types of projects. And we realized that this was going to change significantly and it was going to affect our business in a potentially negative way. That led me to thinking about how are we going to be competitive? What were we going to do? And we were not positioned to move quickly. Often because of the way the real estate business works, it kind of moves very slow, but also because we just hadn't been thinking in those lines. We were not prepared in that way. One of the things that I realized that we were going to need to do was we were going to need to think about a different way of approaching our business, even create a whole different silo. And this led me to baseball. An opportunity crossed my path where I was able to look at an economic development project, a real estate project outside of Charlotte. And it was based on user experiences. It was based on customer experience. And one of the things that I realized was that we were going to have to shift a lot of our real estate development projects into a space where we could insert food and beverage retail and more entertainment retail. But that also should have improved our work in all of our other projects as well, because it would help us build muscles of creativity that we would be thinking of creating better user experiences and better customer experiences for every type of customer that we were going to encounter, whether it was a person going to a retail store that was standalone, whether it was an apartment deal. We were going to have to get better at that. And what we ended up doing was looking at an opportunity where we ended up buying a baseball team in order to push an economic development project in the area that really needed it. That thinking, that being prepared to pivot, being willing to change our physical patterns such that we could take advantage of opportunities around us or make opportunities where it didn't seem like there would be any, was a powerful, powerful thing. That drove us to, being the majority African American owner of a baseball team, the only one in the country right now. It wasn't so much that we were leading off with that in mind. It was that we knew that we were going to need to get into other businesses that could be complementary to what we were already doing in our core businesses. So driving and entertainment use, focusing on food and beverage retail, being willing to just learn something different and go through those experiences and grow from that. It was everything. We had to be prepared to pivot. And I want you guys to have that in your mind. I want you to be able to take new information, absorb it, and then be ready to move on it. And that's not easy to do. But I tell this story because it's something that you can do. If I could do it, you could do it. People would ask a lot, were you into baseball before this? No, but I was into helping communities the entire time I've been in business. And so what they needed was that, and that's something that I want you guys to focus on. the last thing you're gonna talk about, you're gonna have a session about resiliency, and I'm gonna share this story because I think a lot of people go through it, and sometimes people don't want to talk about it. But I want you guys to understand that we're the same. So if I'm doing $500 million worth of projects, you can do the same thing in your businesses, regardless of the type of business. It's about overcoming obstacles. So when I was working on this large project, I was working with some, equity partners in different situations. And there came a time where dollars needed to be posted, and I only had a certain amount of capital. I had to actually cover my payroll, or I was going to have to put up capital on a project that I really didn't have. I had enough money to do one or the other. I couldn't do both. And I was concerned about it. And I was living in, my mom was actually living with me. She, economically, she needed to do that. And it got to a place where I hadn't been paying on my mortgage. I was covering payroll. I was in deals. I was well behind on my mortgage, and I was about to be foreclosed on. And this wasn't that long ago, a few years ago. And everyone, everyone wasn't going to do what they were supposed to do. And it left it up to me to make a decision. And I didn't want to let the community down. I didn't want to not push this project forward. We had been invested in it so much, but there was just no way to do everything at the same time. So I was either going to have to cover the deposit and payroll and lose my house, or keep my house and, not make payroll. It was a very, very challenging situation. So I had to go to my mom and say, look, there's no way I can do both these things. And I say this a lot because I've told the story in public a few different times. What kind of man would, have to have his mom be homeless? Like, who would do that? But my mom, being the wonderful, amazing person that she is, she said, you always try to do the right thing. And that's what our family does. We need to do that. I'll work it out. I ended up helping my mom find a place. I had to do a whole bunch of things. And then I was homeless for, I don't know, almost a year plus while I saved this deal. But I put up the capital, I saved the deal. I ended up pushing through and being able to go to closing on what was $133 million of capital in order to get a project started. That saved our business, but it was a very difficult proposition. But it's all about having the commitment of knowing that you're not going to quit. Champions don't stay on the ground. But the pivotal word in that is stay. You will get knocked down. That is without question. But champions don't stay on the ground. The whole point is you get knocked down and you get back up. And what is your real reason for doing what you're doing? What's your why? So as you go into these sessions, I want you to be prepared and absorb this information, because there are a lot of people depending on you, even if you don't realize it. When I was young and I got in a little bit of trouble, after I reconciled my relationship with the criminal justice system, I had an opportunity to go work in a hardware store that was actually in the hood. Now, our hardware store was owned by a great guy, white guy, and he was there as a small business, right? He was selling hardware. This was before Lowe's was knocking people out of business many, many years ago. And my father introduced me to him because I had to have a job in order to deal with my probation. I go meet this guy and he says, you can work for me. His name was Dennis Crawford, and he lets me work in his warehouse. So I'm in his store throwing concrete, not sure what I'm going to do with my life. And I had just gotten saved. So he and I would talk, and he was a Christian, and he was, talking to me, and he was a father figure for me, and he was a mentor for me and a coach. And it was crazy. It's crazy to me because 28 years later, those lessons that I learned, Saturdays working with him, all of the different things I learned with him, and the opportunity that he gave me to even have a job so that I could get on my feet, turned into a lot of different things. Because of the opportunity he provided for me by being a small business owner and making sure that I had a job, I was able to create the Velocity companies, which at the end of the day ended up doing, hundreds of millions of dollars of projects. It's generated thousands of jobs for people, people that I'll never get to meet, people that he will never get to meet. And because he did that, I was able to do that. We've been able to go into communities and have real impact, really create leverage for those communities so that they can help themselves and continue to grow economically. He's not going to meet those people. He hasn't even seen many of those projects, but it was because he created that opportunity for me that I was able to years later to do these other things. Had that not happened, it could have changed the complete trajectory of my life. Because he's the one that actually brought me the opportunity to Gastonia. He had always wanted to own a minor league team. He never had the opportunity to do that. He now is an owner of a minor league team with me as a minority partner because of the opportunity that he created for me at that time. So that meant that whatever challenges he was going through at that time, I didn't really know what those challenges meant. I did not know what he had to do. I didn't understand being in business at that time. But he was doing that, and he was doing it in a community where, you know, they really needed the resources. He could have been doing 100 other things, but this is what he was doing. And that set an example for me. And it brings me to, you know, why I think what you're doing is so important. So when you think about his story, I want to change the lens. I want to challenge you to see that story I just told you from a different perspective. So I would say to the entrepreneurs and the small business owners that are on this session, what if the opportunity was needed in the future for somebody to have a job that, you know, didn't have a job, and they needed that job so that they could get on their feet and, you know, put one of their kids through school. And it turned out that that child who they put through school could only have gone to college if they hadn't had the job that you provided for them. That child goes to college, has an epiphany, comes up, you know, studies to become a doctor, some sort of a, you know, amazing doctor. And that child actually discovers the cure for breast cancer. Now, if you take that story and push it forward and imagine that that was the case, the severity and the urgency of making sure that you are successful becomes vitally important. We affect each other. We work and live interdependently in one another. We each need each other. If that job, if you staying in business long enough to make sure that you created an opportunity for that person to come work for you, and you changed the trajectory of their life such that they could have a job and have resources and have income so that they could put their child through college, and that child was the one who generated the cure for breast cancer, you would have saved millions and millions and millions of lives. That's not a far-fetched scenario when you think about what Dennis did for me. All the impact that I had is because of what he did at that time. And you have the opportunity to do the same thing. Because you're creative, because you were resilient, because you chose to be adaptable, it could have you become a superhero. You, in fact, may be the catalyst to change the world, but it's because you take what you're doing seriously. You don't just casually approach this information. You don't know who you're going to impact, who's watching you, and where that may go. So I challenge you all, you know, you guys are my heroes. I cannot tell you how proud I am of what you're doing and that you're sticking in it and that you're continuing to push forward regardless of the obstacles. And I just want to continue to put in front of you the opportunity that you might be able to help someone else that is going to change the entire world. You don't know that's going to happen. I can assure you that Dennis did not think that this young knucklehead that he was letting throw concrete in his warehouse was in fact going to have the impact that we're having right now. He didn't know that. And you guys don't know that either. So I just want to, you know, I just want to end my comments there. I want to let you guys know that I'm very proud of you guys. I want you to stick with it. I want you to push forward in these sessions coming up. Like not only your lives depend on it, but that everyone else's lives depend on it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, for that great story and for just your honesty and your transparency and willingness to share and to be vulnerable with us this morning and so forth. I think that there's so much that we can certainly say that we have gleaned from from just listening to you and that we can take as we start talking about lending, as we talk about resiliency, as we talk about pivoting and marketing and everything else. And so thank you again for sharing with us. Due to time constraints, we're going to probably not be able to take any questions just because we want to stay on track this morning. But again, I just want to thank you. And certainly we'll have to, I had read about the minor league baseball team acquisition. And so I'll certainly have to follow that as well as the other projects that you're doing. And if I take one thing away from your comments, certainly is that it's everything that we do is much bigger than us, that there's a trickle down effect. And so the same way that someone may have reached down to help us up, we've got to turn around and reach down to pull someone up as well. And so, again, thank you. And so with that, we're going to get ready and transition to the next part of our morning program. And let's see here. I am going to get ready to, introduce our next panel, or really our first panel this morning. And again, we have got just a great group that has been assembled here. And so they'll start coming up on your screen in just a second in terms of with their videos and so forth. So Brandon, I think Brandon, Lisa, and Greg, we had disabled you guys, but certainly feel free to come on board now. And I'm going to introduce them and then turn the screen over to Brandon to get us started. And so a little bit about the people that we have assembled here. First, our moderator. Brandon Mason is with the Small Business Development Center. And if you're unaware of them, they are truly a small business person's best friend, especially if you're in the early startup phase of your business. Brandon himself is a successful entrepreneur with over 13 years of valuable experience in small business startups, as well as government, including federal, state, and local, and science, technology, engineering, arts, and math-related growth. Brandon's passions include sustainable growth in downtown and rural communities, as well as helping entrepreneurs achieve their goals via coaching and mentoring. His position at the SBDC allows him to work with high technology businesses, as well as Main Street and service businesses to reach their goals. So that's a little bit about our moderator, Brandon Mason. Next, we have Rosa Scharf, and Rosa is with M&T Bank, and she is their vice president and business banker for the greater Baltimore market. She focuses on helping small, minority, and women-owned businesses. And while new to M&T, she has over 3 decades of banking experience, specifically in SBA lending. Next, we have with us Greg Dorsey, and Greg has more than 23 years of experience in the field of law. Mr. Dorsey uses his combined litigation and business acumen to balance the client's overall interest with the client's objectives in resolving complex litigation matters. Greg's practice focuses on complex business and commercial litigation, but he is often engaged in employment litigation, fiduciary, tort litigation, real estate, and disputes in other areas of the law, including white-collar investigations and litigation affecting the rights and liberties of individuals, just to name a few. And lastly, but certainly not least, Lisa Anderson. She is a strategic business advisor and virtual CFO for Navo Transformation Solutions, LLC. And Lisa is a trailblazer who says that she fought her way to the top of the accounting food chain at a time when the industry was dominated by men who had no interest in letting a woman have a slice of their pie. She became a certified public accountant and was an all-star employee. And when her youngest daughter was just 10 months old, began to grow her business from 1 employee, which was bringing in about $200,000 each year, to a 40-employee firm with an annual revenue of more than $4 million. After nearly 30 years of work, she now heads Navo Transformation Solutions, where she teaches business owners about purpose and turning a business into an engine that can work without constant supervision. I think we all like that, the ability to take a vacation and not worry about is the business continuing to move forward while you're out on the beach somewhere. And so with that, I am going to turn things over to Brandon. Let's see here. I'm going to first, we're going to unmute Brandon and then also See if we can bring him in here.
Hi, Leonardo. How are you doing?
Here we go. All right. So Brandon, the screen is yours.
Okay, great. So just to give you guys a little bit of a background about what the SBDC does real quickly, we offer free confidential one-on-one business counseling. We're sponsored by the Small Business Administration, the state of Maryland, and Howard County Economic Development Authority to be there to help you. And at the moment, if you were in business and affected by COVID-19, we have some special capabilities to bring online that we can assist you with as well. To go ahead and get started, let's go ahead and talk about the lending process in general. So quite often small businesses that are in startup mode are really leery about taking on debt. So what are some of the misconceptions about the lending process that you have seen over the years? And this goes to all of our panelists. Rosa, if you want to go ahead and start, that would be great. Thank you.
No, thank you, Brandon. And thank you to the Chamber and Economic Development for hosting this event. Glad to be a part of it. I think there's a lot of misconceptions and fears, and it struck me as when Brandon Bellamy was talking, he kind of was hitting the nail on the head, right? People go through so much in their business, and I think the hardest thing to do is to kind of get in front of a banker and be transparent and share that information, and that's where you kind of have to get to. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is that you kind of have to have everything together, and my business plan completely done, my credit score's got to be perfect, everything's got to be perfect before I sit across from a banker. And I kind of get on a soapbox a little bit, like, develop that relationship with a business banker at a bank and start talking to them. I work with business owners for sometimes 2 years, on, just kind of getting them to the point where we can do some financing, and we pull in partners as needed. I mean, sometimes you don't even realize that, you have this CDFIs and other partners that we can pull in. And Brandon, I mean, just the SBDC, I work with a lot of your different counselors. You guys kind of help get people to the, with the business plan. And even there, not having to have everything together, just getting me involved in the conversation. I can pull in different partners. Our team at M&T, the Minority and Women-Owned Business Team, has worked really hard to develop kind of this ecosystem of resources that we can use. But I would start by saying that I think everyone is bankable, because everybody needs a bank, right? You need deposits, you need to take credit cards, you need to be able to do that. The lending part comes as part of that. And, we can kind of get the conversation there and pull in our partners as needed ahead of time.
How about you, Greg? What kind of misconceptions have you been seeing?
No, I would agree with that as well. And first of all, thanks for my participation this morning. But I think one of the biggest misperception is that borrowers think it's as simple as just walking into a bank, filling out an application, I'm going to get my money. It really is about developing a relationship with a local bank or with a bank of your choice. That's good going into the relationship. It's good to help sustain the relationship just in case things go bad or poorly as far as the development itself is concerned. So I really think you gotta have the mindset that you want to establish and build a relationship, and not just think it's just a sterile type of transaction that you're going to go through.
And Lisa, what about you?
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you again for allowing me to join the panel this morning. I come from a different perspective in the sense that I get to work with small businesses from the inside as a virtual CFO and a strategic advisor. And over the years, I've worked with a lot of small businesses, but recently I've had the pleasure of being able to serve and support the COVID revitalization program through SBDC in DC. And when I think of this question, I think about some of the things I've been coaching small businesses on lately when they come to us with the questions. And the first misconception is I can't afford financing. And I say that that's a oxymoron, because quite frankly, as a business owner and a small business owner in particular, you can't afford not to have it. So that's the first thing. The next thing is debt is risky, but so is business, right? So is business. So I like to say that when you're growing a business, certainly business grows from the inside out, but most importantly, business is most effective when it's scaling, when you understand that business growth is a team effort, and part of your team is that effective team, that efficient team is your banker, and having a good financial relationship. And so those are some of the things that we've been kind of coaching individuals through, especially as we talk about EIDL, the economic injury disaster relief loan. A lot of companies were shied away from that because they didn't want to take on debt. They were afraid of it. And I told them, you know, if you're going to sustain operations, if you're looking to pivot, which is what we're talking about over the next couple of weeks, you've got to engage a partner in the cash flow concepts of your business. And so those are some of the things that we've kind of seen.
Yeah, and you know, from the SBDC perspective, one of the big misconceptions we see is that people think that if they go to one bank and they get rejected for some reason, that it's the end of the world and they're never going to get financing. They don't understand that banks have different business models, and your business plan might not fit into their business model for what they do in terms of lending. So really doing some research and talking to that business banker before you start a relationship and interviewing a couple of them is usually really helpful. You know, some banks only want businesses that have been around for 5 years and have, you know, lending needs above $2 million. But if you're starting up a lawn care business and you need the money to buy, you know, $50,000 worth of equipment, some of those big banks aren't going to be there for you just because you're not part of their business model. So the next question is for Rosa. So what information is a bank looking for when borrowers approach the bank for capital? And is it different right now during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's more intense right now because of the pandemic. I feel like the pandemic has been kind of this great equalizer, right? In the corporate world, you know, we're all at home with our kids, and you know, everybody's on the same level now. And quite frankly, it's happened with businesses as well. Whether you're a business that's been around for 20 years or a new company, if you're going to the bank now for capital, you're really kind of having to go back to those basics in terms of having a business plan that shows, like, you know, this is my new normal. This is, I mean, you know, normally banks look at 3 years of historical. Right now, we're really focusing on what those interim financials look like. And we're asking our borrowers, again, whether you're around 20 years or new, what is it? How are you going to operate off of this new normal, this interim financial? And we're looking for projections, and we're looking for the story. And, you know, I kind of go back to that word transparency, but we really want to understand, you know, if the revenues are down, you know, why, you know, do you have the same level of expenses that are down? Do you have fixed expenses, variable expenses? You know, what is that? We're wanting to understand, did you get a PPP loan and use it for payroll? Or did you get an economic injury disaster loan recovery, and what did you use that for? And can you repay that? Because that's, right now, that's on people's balance sheets, right? That's reflected as debt because the forgiveness process has just started. So, you know, really trying to understand everything. Businesses have had to do so much the past 6 months. And we really need to kind of get our arms around that and understand your industry, right? Some industries, janitorial, party rentals, they're doing fairly well. Some are struggling, right? Restaurants kind of depends on, you know, what base they had before, how were they able to pivot? So I would say that we're asking for a lot of information and a lot of details in terms of the turnaround plan and where the companies are today, where, you know, I think a year ago, if you were an existing business and you had 3 years of good financials, we weren't really looking at that. And even if you were a startup, you know, we weren't as, you know, we were just kind of getting the basics. Right now, everything's kind of different, right? A fitness industry has been impacted dramatically, you know, so how are you going to do that? And we don't really know, like even the projections that you get today, they kind of have to be, they have to reflect that uncertainty, right? We're a gym today and we're doing a lot of things virtually, and we can sustain this for the next 12 months until, you know, things, you know, it's like you have to kind of reflect all the different factors that are going on, and each industry and each business is a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, when it comes to those financial projections, they always are sort of the last thing someone wants to do. And I'm sure you get a lot of people who come to you with a business plan, but have just the back of a napkin type projections, and they need like $50,000. You know, those are the types of things that at SBDC we can help you with, because those financial projections are far more important than that 20-page narrative in the business plan, because it has to reflect both, you know, and it's
you're
really,
100%
really important.
right.
Yeah.
It's, and you know, I try to, projections can kind of just get people, you know, eyes glossed, you know, like, I don't get it. And I mean, really, SBDC is a great tool, but, you know, think of it as a budget, right? I mean, everybody's having to redo their budgets these days, whether you've lost a job or your revenues have been impacted. It is no different. What is the money coming in, and what expenses do I have to cover? And that's really what you have to show the bank. And we are kind of getting down in that nitty gritty. What is your monthly budget, your monthly cash flow for the next 12 months look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the next thing that comes into play is sort of your credit score. So Lisa, I wanted to ask you a question. So what financial information should I be tracking consistently month to month to ensure that I am credit worthy in the first place?
Yeah. So I want to start by saying that as a small business, you want to make certain that, I don't care how small you are, you should be tracking your financial impacts, your financial results on a monthly basis. All too often I see, and I think we experienced this most specifically during the PPP rush to apply for, you know, funding, that not too many companies had brought their financials up to date, and that's a concern. So you want to make certain that your financials are up to date on a monthly basis, not semi-monthly, and not at tax time. You want them to be up to date monthly. You want to be reading those numbers. I like to say that cash is king, but profit is power, right? Because without profit, there's no cash, really. So you want to make certain that you are monitoring your profitability, both gross profit in terms of how you are, the difference between the revenue that you're generating and the direct expenses associated with that revenue, because at appropriate levels, gross profit then gives an indication of whether or not you have enough gross profit generation to cover the operational expenses of the business. So you want to monitor that, but you also want to monitor your net profit, because again, that leads to cash flow. You want to make certain that you're looking at future cash flow. Forecasting is absolutely critical, but you should be forecasting or at least predicting your cash flow each and every month. So you know when things are going to happen. You need to know seasonally when things are going to occur. Accounts receivable is extremely important. Collections absolutely is something that a bank is going to want to make certain that you do a good job of, is collecting, that you bill on time, and that you are monitoring the aging of your receivables. But one of the other key areas that we always like to look at on a regular monthly basis is equity. Debt to equity, the ratio of how much debt you're carrying to the equity or the skin that you have in the game within your organization. How much are you investing in the business? How much are you keeping in the business is extremely important, especially when you're looking for a financing partner and enhancing cash flow. And then your contract diversification and your pipeline and your backlog in terms of how long will your existing contracts. So I operate mainly in the professional services industry, and a lot of our customers are in the government contracting area, and backlog is key. We want to make certain that, or you want to make certain that you have enough revenue generation to continue to sustain the operation, and then help to finance the to pay the debt that you actually may have incurred. And to Rosa's point, as it relates to EIDL, any economic relief that you received, as well as PPP, those are balance sheet items. And a lot of times as small business owners, we want to just really focus on the profit and loss statement, the bottom line, but you need to make certain that you're maintaining a really good, healthy balance sheet and ensuring that you're not overly leveraged, right? As it relates to the amount of debt that you're incurring. So these are things that you want to take a look at on a regular monthly basis. You want to know how they shift. When you go to Rosa and share your story, you want to be able to share seasonally how certain things and how things have happened in your business, how they have trended, and be really educated on how your business operates. And I say there's power in numbers, and you can find all of these stories in your financial statements every single month.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things we see a lot in SBDC are people that are taking on their own accounting. And, you know, one of the things that we see a lot of people spending hours and hours a month doing that, when, you know, the value that you provide by being able to do it for them and set that up really goes a long way when we're putting together the financial plans. I mean, it's so important that they understand their entire financial picture when it comes to both the business and themselves and putting it all together. So Greg, the next question is for you. Is there anything that I should do to protect my business and personal assets before I apply for a loan to guard against another potential downturn?
Well, the first thing to do is recognize that there is a difference between your business assets and your personal assets. And the way to really separate them out in the beginning is to actually create a company. And so whether it's a limited liability company, an Inc., a partnership, whatever that case may be, and you can speak with your advisor about what makes sense for you, you need to do that upfront. And once the business is actually formed, you need to run the business as a business. That means you're not writing your kids' tuition checks, you know, from your business account. You're not paying your home mortgage out of your business account. When you take your financials into your lender wants to see, what are you spending the business assets and money on? And if there are personal assets and personal obligations kind of rolling into the business, that can be a problem, not only in getting the loan approved, but also it could be a problem in the event of an economic downturn. Because what happens then is that a creditor, a lender, will look to see and can look to see, well, how is this business spending its money? And if you're using your business account as your personal account, and there's a commingling of those funds, then you can expose your personal assets to what should just be your business's obligation. Really, the only way you want to expose your personal assets in support of your business is if you sign off on a personal guarantee. And then obviously your personal assets are at risk. But other than that, you want to make sure that, you know, what is in your business is what you're putting at risk, and not, again, what's in your personal coffer. So again, first and foremost, just start that business, create that separate entity, and then make sure you're operating the business.
Yeah, and I can't overstate how important it is to have some legal advice as you're starting up too. One of the things people always tell me is they can't afford their lawyer, or they can't find a lawyer that's unaffordable. But I always have to tell them that a lawyer right now is far less expensive than a lawyer when you actually need one. So, you know, it makes a lot of sense to invest that into your business, because you have to put that minimum amount of investment in there to understand how this works and how this is going to affect you as a business owner. The next question is for Rosa. So are there any programs that banks are currently using to help get loans done for customers?
Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, starting off with what I mentioned earlier, the ecosystem, you know, is you know, especially in the small business world, you know, conventional financing, term loans and lines of credit that banks offer sometimes aren't available to smaller startup companies, or companies that maybe they've had some issues like a pandemic. And one of the biggest tools that banks can use is the SBA loan program. And the most familiar one that everybody knows is the 7A loan program. And that is the ability of the relationship with the SBA is with the bank, between the bank and SBA. And the bank agrees to make a loan to a borrower and then applies to the SBA for a guarantee of that debt. And that guarantee is, I mean, it's just one of the best tools because it allows us to not have to have everything be perfect, right? Maybe it's a credit score issue or lack of collateral. Maybe you need 10 years to pay the loan back. There's a lot of different reasons, but I would say the SBA guarantee is probably one of the biggest tools. Mm-hmm. And then I think the tool, of our partnerships, right? The CDFIs, like Meridian Management, Latino Economic Development Fund, those are out there. The state has a lot of programs, the counties have a lot of different programs that can help us get funding done and get that needed capital to borrowers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part about, you mentioned the 7A is that's not only just an amortized loan, but that's also a line of credit option too. And a lot of the clients we see think that they have to take a loan out in a big bulk amount on day one when, a working line of capital or working line of credit is so much easier and so much less burdensome for them to go ahead and apply for.
Yep. That's the SBA Express program, which is a little bit more streamlined of a process, a little lower guarantee for the banks, but that does have a revolving feature, which again, that capital, especially, working capital is critical for a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially now, it's really important.
Yep.
So Lisa, when is the best time for a business to seek financing support under current market conditions?
So I'd like to say that there's 4 really good times, and it doesn't matter whether you're in conditions like this or you're in really good operating conditions, but there are really 4 real instances where you are best positioned to seek financing. The first one is when you don't need the money, right?
Absolutely.
When you don't need it is the best time. And that's usually when I have, you talked earlier about, forecasting being one of the last things that people want to take a look at, want to actually design or develop. Well, seeking a banking relationship or looking for financial support or, getting some type of line of credit or loan in place when you have cash seems to be one of those hard discussions that I have with business owners. I have it all the time. I'm like, get the money now. You don't need it. Go get it. But that's the best. That's really the most optimum time to get financing. The second one is when you can predict your cash flow. And so even right now, when we are in a really tight economic situation and managing through a pandemic and having to, pivot and reposition and recapture revenues, we still need to be in a position where we can predict our cash flow and be able to share that story, as we've been saying here this morning. So when you're in a position when you can predict your cash flow, you are in a position to go ask for money. I think the third instance is when you are in the midst of being awarded a contract, a new contract that is going to help your business scale. That is a good time to start having a conversation with the bank. And I think the fourth one is probably the most critical of them all. And that is when you have a good banking relationship. So the county executive started this morning talking about PPP and a lot of businesses not being able to participate in that because what I heard him say was because they didn't have a big banking relationship. I say it was because they didn't have an adequate banking relationship. If you have a bank, your banker needs to be a part of that team. Business growth and scaling is a team sport, and your banker needs to be a component of that process. And so you want to make certain that you don't just have a bank that you can find on every corner and go make deposits quickly. You want to make certain that you have a bank where you can talk to somebody like what we're doing today, face to face, have a conversation and share the story. So when you have that relationship in play, they understand you, you understand them, and you can go together. You can scale the business. Transparency is key. So those are the four real areas where I see companies being best positioned to ask. And if you need it, I mean, you never want to wait until you're on your last dollar, or maybe you spent the last dollar. That is the hardest time to try to get financing.
Yeah.
And so those are the four key.
Yeah, those are always the hardest clients for us at the SBDC, because at that point, there's not a whole lot you can do, because if you're in trouble, there's no bank that's going to lend to you, which just spirals, and it becomes really, really difficult to get out of that spiral. And, you know, one of the other things we saw during the pandemic as well, you know, the power of having multiple banking relationships is really important, because we had a lot of clients that for one reason or another had gone with a huge bank, and it turned out that bank was prioritizing clients by their receivables, right? So you're at the bottom of the line if you're a solo entrepreneur. But having a backup lender, or having an account somewhere else, or having an account with a credit union, or having an account with M&T instead of a huge bank really, really makes a big difference, because you need to have some options in your back pocket when something like this happens. So the speaking of, you know, something happening here. So Greg, can I get a business loan if I'm involved in some type of legal dispute or some type of litigation that might be going on? Is there anything there that might be preventing me from financing?
Well, sure. It depends on the type of litigation or legal dispute that you're in. If you and, say, other members of your LLC are fighting over who owns what percentage of the company, or who's entitled to what distribution from that particular company, lenders probably don't want to step into that type of mess. If you're just run-of-the-mill type of litigation, employment lawsuit or something like that, I have seen where lenders still lend, even with litigation brewing. And I think that's why most applications and lenders require that you disclose whether you are involved in litigation or lawsuits. And then if you have that relationship, you can explain the nature of that dispute to the lender. And more often than not, you're going to be able to still at least go through the lending process. And you might not get the loan, but it won't be because you're involved in a legal dispute. But by all means, if you are find yourself subject to litigation or a legal issue or dispute, don't walk away from at least trying to get the loan, because you're not necessarily just going to have the door closed on you just because of that issue.
Yeah, and you know, you had mentioned something there a little bit earlier. One of the things we always try to advise people is if you have a partner, you need a lawyer, because you mentioned that a little bit there, because no bank is going to touch you if you're fighting with your partner. And it's really important to know how that's going to be set up at the beginning, especially through a real clear operating agreement. And, you know, having the one-on-one from a good lawyer goes a really, really long way, because you never know exactly what's going to come down the pipe or what's going to happen to that partner. And, you know, that even comes into play when it comes to financing. I have a lot of clients that don't realize that if I have a 50-50 partner, that person has to go to the bank with me now. There's that 20% equity threshold that they're not really aware of most of the time. So, you know, having a partner and being able to disclose all of that information is so important, and be able to just talk to a lawyer about it is also really important to have happen. I guess the last question here, is there any like one good piece of advice that you would give to anyone who's listening today? And we'll go ahead and start with Greg. You can go ahead and see what we can do.
Well, you know, in my practice, I represent a lot of small business owners, and I love working with entrepreneurs, working with small business persons, because they lay it on the line every day. So, you know, as a lawyer, my advice and recommendation would be just, again, to never give up. And if you face a challenge, you got to meet that challenge head on. Don't put your head in the sand, or bury your head in the sand, as they say, because the issue won't go away. So just confront whatever you're facing head on, and you'll get through it and you'll overcome it. So just keep persevering.
Yeah, absolutely. The persistence is just so important as an entrepreneur, and learning it is not exactly easy. It's one of those types of things. What about you, Lisa? Any advice that you'd like to leave everybody with?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, to sum it all up, just remember that cash flow considerations are strategic. it should be a part of your strategic plan, the things that you evaluate on a regular basis, and making certain that you engage the right people and that you don't wait until you actually need or are desperate for money,
Right.
but incorporate that as part of your mission forward, as part of the way in which you're going to continue to move the business.
Mhm. And having that plan is so important, because without it, it's one of the things we see a lot of clients have that haven't planned. And the most common feeling we get told is we feel like we're drowning because it's all coming in on us, and I didn't think about it beforehand, and I'm just putting fires out. So the planning aspect and making sure that you're using the team that you see here as part of that planning process is really important, because we all do work as a team. Your business isn't and can't operate in a vacuum. And it's just so important to know who that team is, know who your bankers are, your accountants, and who your legal advice comes from is going to be really important. Rosa, is there anything else that you'd like to share with?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's develop those relationships, right? Have a Lisa, a Greg, and a Rosa on your team, right? Have Brandon,
Absolutely.
have the SBDC on your team. I mean, everyone here and out there, I mean, all the banks, we want to help you. So know your numbers, know your story, and be transparent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't see any questions. Leonardo, you can correct me if I see any other questions. So I think we have a few more minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, but no, yeah, I don't see it in the chat, but perhaps maybe what we can do is also just open it up
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
and see if there are any questions from those that are listening in that would like to ask before we kind of continue on. Certainly, we've got some additional topics we can cover in this realm, but want to give those on an opportunity. So if you have a question, you can preferably put it in the Q&A side of things, or you can put it in the chat. We're going to monitor both of them. And I did see a hand to go up. So, okay, let's see here. Okay, so Roger, you're on. You may have to unmute yourself, but Roger Barnes.
Yes, this is Roger. For the benefit of some of the clients that I have worked with, they have found that they may have had some legal issues years ago. So my question for some of those businesses is, how far back will the bank go in trying to assess and evaluate legal issues that a business owner may have had of a personal nature, even if their business is successful now?
I think, Roger, that it depends on the nature of the issue, right? I think that in general, after 7 years, we're not digging that far. But if it's if it's a bankruptcy, or if it's out there, if we're still seeing it, hopefully we just get the details on that. But we're not usually, when it's longer than 7 years, we're just wanting to understand it. That's not really impacting our decision. We just want to understand the nature of it, and is it resolved?
And Roger, even with some of those, we have some FINRA types of clients, securities types of clients that require some clearances, as it were. And as long as we fully explain in written prose to whoever's asking, and kind of lay it out there fully, we found that with the correct wording that you're putting out describing that event, whatever it was, that can go a long way as well. So even if it was just 2-3 years ago, as long as you can aptly describe that, and like Rosa said, if there's a bankruptcy issue, that's a different question, different scenario. But certainly I would still speak with someone about how to best categorize or describe what that issue was to the lender.
Yeah, adding that personal credit narrative really does go a long way, because life happens. Divorce happens, accidents happen, partnerships fall apart, all of that kind of stuff. And if you explain it to the banker, then they don't have to catch it and then ask you about it. Because if you catch it and then I ask you about it, it sort of seems like you're hiding something from me. We don't want that. We just want to make sure that we lay it out all on the table, so we're all prepared for what we need to do to move forward.
Yeah, I would say the transparency is just key. It's just the answer to it all.
Yeah.
Honestly. And the other thing that I would add to this, because the advice that was given here is spot on. The one thing I would add to this is, we talked about having everybody here as a part of your team, but get this team together at least once a year to have a conversation about some of the challenges that you have faced in business and personally, so that together you can develop a strategy that will help to continue to move yourself and business forward in a positive method.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because your business is going to grow and change, and what's true today isn't going to be true 12 months from now, especially if something catastrophic happens there. And the better that you can plan for it, the more successful the outcome is going to be for you. Are there any other questions, Leonardo?
I haven't seen any additional ones come through, so we've still got about another 5 minutes if you guys want to continue on.
Sure. Yeah. So, one of the things that was brought up a couple of different times was the PPP and the EIDL. At the moment, those programs, I believe, aren't accessible. They're accessible only on a limited basis. So what other types of financing options does a business that's in business have available at the moment? Rosa might be the best person for that one.
Yeah, no, I think there are still funds under EIDL.
Right.
The PPP did close, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like Congress is getting together anytime soon, because that was definitely part of it. There was a lot of considerations about extending PPP, the debt relief program, all those things that were so critical. So, I mean, right now, I think that, banks are, a resource, our CDFIs. The EIDL is still out there through the SBA, and that's directly on the SBA's website. And that financing, I mean, those terms are, I think it's deferred for 12 months, and then it's like 3.75 for 30 years. So it's very, affordable financing. So and then I think the various states and counties still have grant programs and things like that. So, I mean, we're kind of looking at those sites for funding like that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'd like to point out is SBDC has a counselor in just about every county in Maryland. So if you aren't in Howard County, I would definitely connect with your SBDC consultant, because they'll connect you with local resources, and a lot of those different towns and counties have different resources right now, and a lot of them are coming online and going offline really quickly. So the better relationship you have with someone who can get you that communication really fast is important. And if you are in Howard County, I definitely want you to connect with the Howard County Economic Development Administration, because they have a great newsletter that comes out anytime that there's a change. It's really, really a good place for you to kind of, as a hub, find that information locally as programs come online and offline, so you are informed. When we were looking at these, when this first happened, one of the things we saw at the SBDC were businesses that had a CFO on board had the PPP loan in their hands just about as fast as you possibly could. But the ones that were handling the financing on their own and handling the legal on their own and handling the banking kind of haphazardly, they were 5 to 6 weeks later, and it's small businesses, 5 to 6 weeks in terms of cash flow is huge, is absolutely huge. So it's just really, really important. And I can't stress enough how important it is to talk to the bankers, the accountant, and the legal team to make sure that you have a really good foundation set up and ready to go.
And can I add to that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You got to take the advice also.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
You have to put this in action. It's not about shopping, because I've seen this happen over the course of the last several weeks as well, where small business owners go place to place to place to ask the question. They get the same answer, but they're looking for a different answer.
Yep.
The answer's the same. You just got to put it in place.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to do your financial forecast. Don't be afraid to apply. Maybe you were turned down for a larger loan. Go apply for a smaller loan. Just put the actions in place.
And there's help out there for all of those different things. Whatever situation you're in, there's somebody out there that can help, or at least teach you what you should be doing to move forward and can help you develop that plan.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, I think we're at a good transition place. And so want to thank our panelists here, and Rosa, Lisa, and Greg for sharing, and Brandon for doing a great job of moderating and so forth. I think it was a wealth of information that was shared this morning. And so definitely want to thank you all again for participating and sharing this information. And also for those of you that are listening, as well as for those participating, we are live streaming this. So if you want to share it later on with clients or what have you, you can feel free to do so from the Chamber's YouTube link and so forth. And so with that, we are now going to get ready to transition into the last segment of our discussion this morning before we wrap things up. And so I'm going to ask now if Randy Croxton would prepare to come on, as well as Cara De Pietro from Kinetic Capital. And I will introduce them, and I will be moderating actually this discussion here. And so first, a little bit about Randy. Randy has 45 years of experience in the public and private financing arena, with particular emphasis on small and minority business development. He is currently the Senior Vice President and co-founder of Meridian Management Group, which began in 1995. And so as a partner there, he's responsible for initiating, underwriting, structuring, closing, syndicating, and monitoring of the loans and investments for Meridian Management Group. He has received a bachelor's degree from Morgan State University. So that is Randy Croxton. Next is Cara De Pietro. And Cara currently has founded a company called Kinetic Capital. And ultimately, it's a private financing firm grounded in the principles of traditional and behavioral economics. It offers a creative, collaborative approach to designing custom financial plans for small businesses. Using elements from standard finance products, the company helps to create individualized hybrid finance plans by way of strategic cash flow management. A little bit about Cara herself. She founded Kinetic Capital after purchasing HMC, a national custom architectural millwork design build firm founded by her father in 1989. Under her leadership, the company experienced 23% year-over-year growth, doubling in size by 2017. As a result of her efforts, she was named Small Business Person of the Year by the US SBA from the state of Maryland. Her experience facing small business challenges helps her to offer professional capital management services that she believes stands out from the rest. At Kinetic Capital, they can honestly say they have walked in their customers' shoes. De Pietro named her firm after recognizing that capital and business creates momentum, just as kinetic energy and potential energy do for the universe. Kinetic's approach provides business leaders with unique insights that drive growth and profitability. And since 2017, she has successfully managed more than $26 million for small businesses. And so again, that's a little bit about Cara De Pietro. And so we're going to get ready to get started here. And so let me make sure, let's see here. I'm going to have them. Excellent. Here we go. So Randy and Cara, good morning and welcome and thank you. And just a little bit, we were scheduled to have a third participant this morning, and Antonio Tabora with the Latino Economic Development Corporation. And Antonio has had a couple of things that come up that is unfortunately going to prohibit his participation. But the good news is that, as I shared in their bios, both Cara and Randy have enough experience, both, I guess you could say, from an education standpoint, as well as from maybe just as we might call the School of Hard Knocks, that they can certainly, I think, more than cover for Antonio here this morning. And so, we're going to talk about alternative financing options. And so, we've heard a lot this morning. And with COVID-19, PPP and EIDL loans and everything, and traditional lending relationships have been, certainly the main topic. But, overall, just in a general sense, access to capital continues to be, perhaps the number one hurdle for many small businesses, and especially those that are starting up. And so, one, I think, tell us a little bit about, again, your organizations, and more so how you're working to try to solve this problem. And we'll start with you, Cara, and then go to Randy.
Okay, hello. So as Leonardo explained, I am a small business owner. And when I started running the business, I became very aware of the challenge of not only accessing capital, but accessing enough capital. So while my company that I bought was over 25 years old, they had never had, it was run as a lifestyle business. It was cash in, cash out. There were no retained earnings because they had paid people bonuses. So it was run just, in a different sort of way. But I wanted to grow the business, and we had received an $8 million project award for the Air Force, and we needed bonding in order to, accept that project. So that is when I really realized what has to happen and how one thing leads to another. Like, you can't get a bond program if you don't have financing, if you don't have a line of credit. So then, putting all of these things together as I was going along, then, get late payments. How am I going to pay payroll if I'm late in receiving payments? How am I going to buy materials for a project that I have to buy up front if I haven't been paid for the project yet? So as I was encountering these challenges as a small business owner, I was finding solutions for each one. And what I also wanted to avoid was paying too much for capital, because, you, as a small business owner, I wasn't able to find anyone who would make a loan to me without collateral, without security, and everything, my house, my accounts receivable, my inventory, my whatever. And then on top of that, I wasn't able to get the amount that I really needed in order to grow my business. So as I was, over the first 3 to 4 years of the business, and as I was encountering these challenges and finding solutions, at some point I realized I have a lot of tools here that I don't hear anyone talking about. And so I wanted to start a business that would share those solutions with other small business owners. So that is how Kinetic Capital came to be.
Excellent. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the products and how Kinetic Capital actually works in a second. So Randy, share with us a little bit, about Meridian Management Group and ultimately, the work that you all are doing to try to dive into this access to capital challenge.
Okay, thank you, Leonardo, and I certainly do appreciate the opportunity to be here. And we were here last year as well, but information changes very quickly, just as the economic environment changes, as we can see. But Meridian Management Group has been in existence since 1995. We provide financing to businesses in the state of Maryland through programs that we manage for the Maryland Department of Commerce. One of those programs is the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, which has been in existence since 1980, as well as providing assistance through a relatively new program known as, many people refer to as VLT program, Video Lottery Terminal. But our name for our program is the Maryland Casino Business Investment Fund. which also provides financing to businesses, again, in the state of Maryland. The whole objective has been, and our whole battle has always been, trying to access capital for businesses that just aren't able to qualify for traditional funding, to help them to be able to expand and grow and deal with issues that they've had in the past, was trying to get out of difficulties that were created because of the lack of capital. So we've been doing this for, since, again, NMG since 1995. The COVID conditions, of course, have changed the environment a great deal. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But right now, with Meridian Management Group, the funding that's provided through the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority does allow us to provide contract financing for businesses that have government or public utility contracts. So, as Cara was indicating, there have been situations that come up with the businesses. They get these jobs, but they don't have lines of credit in order for them to carry their payroll and the suppliers until they get to the point of starting to collect. And that can take some time, particularly on the front end of a contract. So we provide these lines of credit to help you keep the cash flow going. We will be lending against the receivables and allow them to be able to, again, get cash immediately while they wait for that payment to come in. And when the payment does come in, then it goes to apply it against the invoice that was advanced against. So it gives them, again, the ability to keep that cash flow so that they don't fall behind in the way of payroll and or meeting their suppliers' needs. The contract financing program can go up to $2 million in the line of credit. We can also provide through the line of credit what we refer to as mobilization funding. As Cara also indicated with the start of her business, you get the loan, you get the contract, but now you got to start implementing that. You're putting out funds before you're able to even bill for this activity. So we're able to provide this mobilization funding to assist them to be able to carry payroll, to get the supplies, to handle their normal business activity prior to being able to bill for that first invoice. And along with the line of credit that we provide, then we're able to recapture and repay through that process of payments through the contract. We also provide guarantees to them, similar to the SBA 7A guarantees. We can provide guarantees to banks, institutional lenders, to assist businesses to be able to access capital that the bank's just not comfortable with by itself. They need some type of support for various reasons. And we are able to consider doing that as well. And our guarantees go up to 80% of the loan amount, and our exposure can go up to $2 million as well. We also provide direct assistance, direct loan assistance through what we refer to as our Equity Participation Investment Program, and we call that EPIP. With EPIP, we're able to provide direct loans up to $2 million. And we also are able to provide investments into the business, equity investments into the business as well. So it gives us the opportunity to be able to structure the financing to allow the business to be able to grow and not be heavily burdened with having to start making payments immediately. Particularly with the equity fund, those are that's patient capital that'll be there and waiting for value to develop before any consideration of recapture will enter into the picture. But with the loans that we're able to provide, we're able to structure those in a way to keep the cash flow flowing for that particular business, so that they, again, even when we're not the only lender, we will go in looking going in subordinated positions with other lenders. And again, we want to structure it so that we don't, we want to make the primary lender comfortable with the total cash flow capability of the business. We also can do what we refer to as surety bonding. We can provide surety bonds to businesses. We can act as the surety if they aren't able to get surety bonding through traditional markets as well. With the surety bonding program, we can provide this for any business. Used to be restricted to government public utility contracts, but we can now do that for any type of business or contract. Bonding is becoming a major obstacle for many businesses because of the fact that more and more contracts are requiring bonding, regardless of the type of service. Used to be very construction oriented with bonds, but now that is broadened out to a number of different industries that are having needs to get surety bonding in order to obtain these contracts and to be able to perform on them. So with that capacity that we do have through those four various components, we're able to provide basically a full service assistance for a business, and we can use, we can complement the use of these programs. Like we can do a surety bond along with the line of credit, or we can do a term loan along with a line of credit, or we can revert an equity investment in along with some other type of funding as well. So with that capability, it does allow us the chance to be able to assist the business in a major way. And we've been developing this for 4 years, since 1980. The team has been involved either as state employees or as a private entity as MMG. So it's been quite a while that, to get to this point, but actually this capability, this entity, under one entity, basically MMG through the Maryland Department of Commerce, is the only one in the country that has that type of capability in one place.
Wow. So we're going to definitely come back there and kind of peel back those many layers in just a moment. Cara, I want to come back to you. And so in particular, something that you touched on, and that was in your opening comments, you talked about there's one thing about to have challenge of access to capital and then access to enough capital. And so I shared earlier when we got started about, your success as SBA Small Business Person of the Year. And yet here it is, the company's doing well. You've got the awards to demonstrate that you're great at managing the company's growth. And yet you're still having some of those same difficulties that we've been talking about in terms of accessing funds and so forth. And so I guess maybe for the group, talk a little bit about your small business journey and ultimately Kinetic, and then how Kinetic Capital really came into being and the products that you're offering to try to fill those gaps that you've experienced.
Sure. So as I was saying earlier, and encountering challenges as a small business owner, I began trying to understand what it was that was prohibiting me from getting the capital I needed or enough capital. And if I could get capital, what were the challenges with that? Like, personal guarantees and just, different restrictions, and you can use this money, this percent for this and that percent for that I felt like I wasn't really in control of my business and being able to strategically manage my cash flow, because it was all, it was already kind of spoken for. Now I understand that banks have risk and everybody has to protect themselves. After Dodd-Frank and the lending restrictions changed for small businesses and community banks, the protections increased for the banks to try, not only for themselves, but also so that, either consumers or business owners wouldn't get in over their heads with financing that they couldn't afford. So I did a lot of research in that. And as I was doing that, I realized that I had looked at two parts. I looked at this in two different ways. So when I looked back at all the solutions I had found, I realized that I was looking at the types of capital. Capital is not just cash. There are, 5 major types of capital. And I wanted to see if I was leveraging each of those, the types of capital, and kind of combining them to find the solutions for my business. And at the same time, I was looking at the business and looking at the divisions of the business: accounting, sales, manufacturing in our business, procurement. And then I was kind of trying to match them up. And what I came up with basically was that I had split up the business. I split it up in terms of looking at types of capital. I split it up in terms of looking at the business and each of its individual parts. And then I found solutions for all of those things. For example, we'll buy materials for a project for 120 days at 2%. So let's say that a contractor needs to buy materials, but they don't want to come out of pocket and they don't have a line of credit or something like that. Well, we will buy the materials for them, and the security is the materials themselves. And so then the business has 120 days to pay for those materials. That way they can pay after they've received payment themselves. So we have a service where we help businesses get paid on time right from the beginning. You were talking about, how a lot of times small businesses don't have legal support. They don't have these things in place that they really need in order to have some sort of document or something that actually, you can enforce. So we have this program and there's legal as part of this for every state, but from the beginning, we help the business, how they, when they are awarded the project, let documents descend that tell their client, contractor A knows what they're doing. They know what their rights are. They know when they should be paid. And let's hope we can all work together fairly on this. And if we're not going to be able to work fairly on this, then company A knows how to file a lien or knows how to place a claim against your bond or whatever. So putting that out there in the beginning, helps with timely payment of receivables. There were times where I didn't have enough cash to buy certain things. And there were a lot of places that only took cash, our landlord. There were certain specialty material suppliers. And so we have this program where we will take the credit from the business owner and we will pay them cash so they can pay cash to their whoever it is that they need to buy something from. This is mentioned, and this is a huge hurdle for small business owners, but having the up-to-date accounting reports that a bank or whomever need to see in order for them to understand your business. And, of course we had an accountant and other businesses to talk to, but we never had financial statements that really described and properly illustrated the health of the company. And so we came up with a partnership with accounting firm who will, it's like they take the business's accounting. So let's say they do quarterly reviews. They'll take the business's quarterly review from either them or the accountant, and they will create financial statements that will help the business to communicate the situation that their business is in. And that's important also in the beginning for what we do, so that we know where the break points are, where the issues are. We have specialized point of service options. Like if you're a restaurant, you would have a different point of sale than a service company, or and what we found was that all of these different specialized products were so much cheaper than capital and easier to get, because the collateral for those funds you need it anyway, and that we wouldn't have to pay 10-15% for a loan, and because that would eat up our profit. If our profit's only 10-20% and we have to pay 15% for a loan, we're not going to be making enough money. So the traditional banking and kind of what we're doing works hand in hand, because this way there's more security for the traditional finance institution, because they don't have to pay for everything. you know, the small business can have these other tools, and then the traditional finance, you know, bank or whatever can loan the business things for different purposes that they might need, instead of it being, you know, during a project to help them with cash flow. It could be real estate, it could be whatever, it could, you know. And then also I had a really hard time being pigeonholed. And I felt that I wasn't able to make decisions, like I said, for the business when I had rules to follow that weren't mine. And the rules didn't know my business. And so it, you know, it was just really difficult to be creative in your business and to do things strategically so that you can, you know, increase your profit or whatever. And so that's where we are now. Basically, like a small business owner will come in, we'll look at their business, we break it all apart in different, you know, each piece apart. We look to see what types of capital they're leveraging. Are they leveraging their external capital and their internal capital and natural capital? And then we look at our portfolio of services and we match it up. Okay, so then it's like we break the business up, we put the services with it, and it becomes basically like a puzzle, and we put it back together. And then it's whole and it's running, in different ways that are specialized and targeted for whatever the purpose for those funds are.
Wow, so we're going to definitely come back because you shared a lot, and I'm going to switch kind of to Randy. But because Cara, you shared a lot that we're going to talk about with him, and that is on the accounting side, and obviously the finances was ultimately what really got you into kind of looking at all of the different segments of your business and trying to figure out, you know, where do you procure certain things and how do you pay for it and so forth. And so with that, you know, Randy, I think this really also gets at the heart of just entrepreneurship and starting a business. And so, you know, and especially we talked about it in the previous session with COVID-19, how that's kind of even changed a few things in terms of finance in and of itself. So let's just kind of almost maybe go back in a sense, I'm not going to say to the basics, but to a beginning stage. So if I'm a business owner and I'm out here trying to finance things, how should I perhaps look to finance, you know, my business kind of in this post-COVID economy?
Leonardo, it's becoming a situation where we're both learning, the borrower and the lender. This is a new environment that we haven't been in before. And because of that, there's a lot that the entrepreneur needs to go back and start to rethink in a different way. I think Rosa mentioned earlier about a business plan. Well, that business plan that they've had sitting in the drawer for the past 2-3 years, if they're an existing business or the one they've been developing as a startup, may not be effective in this new economy, in this new post-COVID or the new reality that we'll be dealing with. So they have to look at that business plan and make sure that they understand the pitfalls of being in an economy that is kind of in a recovery stage. Now, there are certain industries that are going to be hit harder than others as far as recovering from COVID-19, you know, retail, entertainment, travel industry, the personal services. Those industries have to rethink as to how they're going to operate in a profitable way in a new environment, a new economy. And that is kind of what the lenders are going to be looking at. What adjustments are you going to make in order to be able to be profitable? Because so many businesses, unfortunately, have these fixed costs that kind of prohibit a lot of flexibility in the way of being able to generate revenue in a profitable way. So they have to rethink how they're going to get this accomplished. And a lender is going to be looking at that very carefully in the process of trying to provide funding to them. So they need to take time and do their homework in order to get this accomplished. And, you know, and it should be with a team. As indicated in the earlier panel, having a team of individuals to help you think through this is something that is very valuable in order for your company to survive and to thrive in the new reality.
And so as a follow-up to that, and actually in this case, I'm going to ask you and Cara the same question. And that is, see, we're talking about, of course, the accounting and the financing and financials and so forth. And that is, if I'm a business and I come to, and I knock on your door, or we schedule a Zoom meeting to discuss, and I email you things, or if I find out about Cara, do you, I guess, how important are the having sound financials and accounting, an accounting process and so forth? How important is that for even you? I mean, obviously we heard it from, the first panel and from our traditional, banks and so forth, but are you going to be looking at, again, their financial statements and so forth in much the same way as a traditional lender would? And I'll start with you, but certainly Cara, I want to hear how Kinetic will consider that as well. So Randy.
Answer is yes. And the information that was provided by the earlier panel was very valuable. Lisa hit the points very clearly as to having financial statements that are accurate is critical for a lender. They have to feel comfortable with the numbers that they are given in order for them to make a decision to give a loan, but even how to structure a loan. So by getting these quality numbers, either from an accountant or from a virtual CFO, will allow you to have numbers that the banker and the lender can feel comfortable with, that they don't have to question whether or not this is classified properly, or whether this is the true amount of expenses and or revenue that is reflected in your financial statements. QuickBooks are good, but if you don't have anyone outside looking at it as a third party with a different perspective and understanding of how things are classified and the details of that, you're going to miss out. And it's important for you to recognize that you need to have that when you start your business, because that's when you're going to, businesses fail in the first 5 years and probably the first 3 years because of poor decisions and not having accurate numbers and accurate understanding of what their financial conditions are. So we always encourage them to get quality numbers. You can't afford it. You can't afford to be without it, because this is going to help you not only in the short run, but in the long run. And every CPA is not equal. Now, some are very good at providing advice, which is what you want, advice other than just someone who's just going to crunch numbers and give it back to you. You want to get their experience. These CPAs deal with a number of different companies, many in your own industry, and they have insight as to how and what should be, how your numbers should be working and should be acting, and whether or not they're in the right proportion. Is your cash flow where it needs to be? Is your cost of goods where they should be based upon your industry? And if your accountant is not able to give you that advice, then you have the wrong accountant.
Thank you. And so Cara, so if someone comes into Kinetic Capital, are you, again, kind of scrutinizing the financial statements the same way that, say, again, an M&T might, or even a Meridian Management Group?
No, because our job is to get them there. So when a small business owner comes to us, it's great if they have accounting reports and financial reports and all of that, but we are not expecting them to. So what we have decided to create is a membership. We've talked about how legal services are expensive. You go to all of these different places for different things, insurance, legal, accounting, and you're talking to different people with different, philosophies, and one doesn't know what the other's doing and all of this. So we decided to put together a network of professionals, service professionals, and kind of create a buying group. So group purchasing organization. Because what I also realized is that the small business, they would need less money if things were less expensive, and they would be more competitive if they didn't have to pay more than, a contractor small business contractor would be more competitive if they were getting the same pricing, material pricing as White and Turner. So we are putting together this group purchasing organization where we can provide group health insurance. I got my health insurance license in order to do that. So basically they'll join Kinetic Capital, and then, you know, all of the various services that I mentioned before are part of their package. And then they can also buy group health insurance. They can, you know, there's support there, because while, you know, small business is the most important as it relates to the economy, we all know that over 50% of people are employed by small business, that small business dollars, you know, stay in the community at much greater rates. But small business hasn't evolved in terms of its, in terms of how it sells and how it meets the customer. So we need to find a way also for small businesses to be able to sell enough without having a brick and mortar store waiting for people to come in. So we've also created a virtual Main Street. And so when someone becomes a member of Kinetic Capital, they get a package of these services and they get their store on virtual Main Street. So also virtual Main Street doesn't have to be local. You know, let's say that you go on a vacation to Colorado and you find a small business that you love, and you know, you bought things there, and then it comes to be Christmas time and you think, oh, I wish I could go there to shop for Christmas gifts. I saw something I really liked there. Well, if you go to kineticcapitalllc.com and you go to the virtual Main Street, that business, hopefully we can either reach out or they'll know about us, and they will have a page designed. So you go to kineticcapitalllc.com, you go to the virtual Main Street, there's a map of the United States, you pick the state you want to go to, and then it'll have a list of all the small businesses that have signed up for the Kinetic Capital membership, which includes the virtual Main Street. I think I got off on a tangent there. I kind of forgot what you asked me.
Actually, I think you touched on it. It was more so on the financial side, because part of it, what I was getting at with the question is, I think sometimes, at least from my years of experience in talking with either existing small business owners, those that are thinking about it, and Brandon touched on it earlier, Brandon Mason, and that is the fact that, you know, because it's hard, and it's not sexy, the financial aspects of your business and doing projections and financial statements and accounting, you know, and unless you really get into numbers, you know, like Lisa Anderson, you know, that part is really hard. It's not fun. And so I know a lot of times for small business owners, that's if you could get by without necessarily having to do a lot of that grunt work or what have you. But yeah, so I'm just going to finish the statement. But my point is that ultimately, you can't get the financials are something you can't get away from, whether you're going to see M&T, you know, or Meridian Management Group, or if Antonio was here, you're going to see the Latino Economic Development Corporation. At some point, you come back to where you've got to have some solid financials and documentation in place. Go ahead.
Yes, so our services will help the small business in doing that, because what I know as a small business owner is that I'm much better at running my business than doing accounting work. And so if there is, you know, somewhere, which would be the Kinetic Capital membership, where they're handling all of the financial stuff, they're taking in the data on day one. We're looking at that data on day one, however it is presented to us. We're finding the solutions that make sense for them. And then the Kinetic Capital membership is a monthly fee. So they'll have a monthly fee, and for that fee, they'll get accounting, they'll get legal services, they'll get this, you know, various invoicing and billing services, the document tracking. So all of these different things come together as part of the Kinetic Capital membership. and then they will have the documents and information they would need to then go to a bank if they need a term loan, or a larger SBA loan or something like that. Like, we're putting the pieces together kind of as the foundation that then the bank can build on. We get them to the ground floor on a solid foundation, and then they will have what they need to get, bigger and more financing.
And so with that, Randy, I'm going to go back and ask you something, and that is, MMG does a lot of different things, and so talk a little bit also, how do you work with, I guess, perhaps a traditional lender, because I'm sure sometimes it can be confusing as to if I come to see you, or if I go to see again a CDFI, or if I go to maybe even a Howard County Economic Development Authority that's got its own set of small business programs. Talk a little bit about how maybe organizations such as yours or others work with traditional lenders, and whether you're taking first position, second position. Talk a little bit about how that works, so people have a better understanding at times how the pieces fit together.
Sure. Well, typically, what we deal with when they come to us directly, we always talk to them about their banking relationship. Who are they banking with? Have they tried to access funding from that particular bank? We take a look at their financial statements, get a look at their business needs and what they're looking to get accomplished, and to try to determine whether or not a bank can be included in this package. Our objective is to assist them to get the full package of funding they need. And it's not necessarily that we're in competition with the bank. We want to try to get them to the bank. Our objective is to get them bankable, because again, this is a state program. It's not built for long-term relationships as a bank is for businesses. We're here to try to be basically a stopgap to help you to get to the point where you are being able to be bankable. So we do work with the banks. We do take subordinated positions behind the bank. Rarely do we ever get a position in front of a bank. But we provide assistance in providing that gap of funding that may be needed in the way of either providing a guarantee or direct funding. We will be subordinate and work with them in that way. I mean, there are other loan programs as well in the counties and in the various jurisdictions that we will probably try to bring in as well as participants, again, to share the risk, so to speak. Because our funds are limited. Although we have a decent amount of funds, it's still a limited amount in relationship to the total need of assistance to businesses that are not able to access capital. So we are trying to work those relationships to try to provide as much of the need that the business needs in a way that is structured that they can be successful. Because again, because of all these different programs that are available, they have different limitations as to how much they can do, at what percentage of rate they can provide, and how they can structure their financing. So trying to pull all that together is what we try to get accomplished with businesses that do come.
Excellent. And so as we get ready to wrap up, I'm going to ask both of you this same question, and then certainly for those still on, want to give a few minutes if there's any questions that anyone would have. But I always like to, I guess, kind of wrap up with this. And so, again, I'm a startup, or maybe I'm not even a startup, but maybe I was able to get the business going early on without having to look at any type of financing, perhaps besides either my own or my friends and family network. And now I'm having to consider taking on some type of debt. What advice would you give that person? And so maybe as the business owner, I'm going to start with Cara, and then certainly wrap it up with you, Randy. So Cara, again, I'm starting to look at some type of source of financing. What bit of advice would you give, especially knowing what you know now?
For a startup company?
It could be a startup. It could even be someone that's not a startup. I mean, again, you take the company that you purchased. It had been in business, many years before you, I'll bet, maybe structured differently, but it was an established business. So what advice would you give someone? Ultimately, I was just saying looking to raise capital or secure capital.
Well, what we would do is to look at the business and kind of, we'll have levels of membership. So we might have a level of membership that is more like beginner. And we then have we have professional relationships. So like I might have Kinetic Capital might have a professional relationship with Randy's company. And so we have kind of like a sphere of influence where all of the things that we offer are offered through partners. It's not just us. We're just the one bringing it all together. So then we'll communicate and collaborate with our partners. Okay, this is what Randy can offer, and what do we need to do for this business so that Randy can do what he needs to do for them after that. And then this way, it's more of an ongoing relationship where we're understanding the people, we're understanding their business. We can give better advice that way. But it's really leveraging everything is about leveraging the specialist. So Randy is the specialist at, guarantees and the other things that they do. There are other specialists in like the various credit companies. We have the insurance. While I have my insurance license, we're not setting the companies up. We have a broker who is specialized in insurance and will set up the members with their group health insurance. So I think that bringing it all together and making things easier for the small business to get to, and that way they have less time that they have to spend trying to figure out all of these kind of administrative things, and they're not spending enough time growing their business. So our purpose really is to take all of the weight that weighs the small business owner down, take that, and that way they can be lighter and they can go do their thing.
So Randy, what advice would you give to someone, again, seeking capital, perhaps maybe it's for the first time, or again, whether it's startup or established, but a bit of advice you would give?
With a startup, the key for them is to come in with realistic expectations of how their business is going to perform. Often startups come in with high expectations. This is what's going to happen. I can guarantee you that this is going to work okay, and so forth. But they need to make sure that they're being realistic about the numbers that they present as to what's going to be happening with the business, their projections, so that they, again, are getting the confidence of the lender who wants to know, am I dealing with someone who just has these, pie in the sky type of expectations, and is not and lacks the experience to be able to understand that you don't hit the road at full speed. You have to build your business up. One, because of lack of access to capital, and because of the fact that you're going to be able. This is a startup. You're just starting out. People have to get to know you. So again, we're being realistic about what you present as projections for the business. For businesses that are already existing and have not gotten funding before, one of the things we see often is that you see about tax returns. And typically, unfortunately, that's the main financial statement that's prepared by a CPA for them. And so you're looking at the tax returns and you see these losses in the business over the past 2-3 years. And they ask them, what's the reason? Well, we're trying to cut, paying taxes. Okay, that's fine if you don't ever want any financing. So it's hard for us to say, oh, okay, well, we'll just ignore the losses based on what you said, and we'll based upon what we think you can do, or you can tell us what you really did. That's a problem. So with the tax returns, they need to realize that it has to reflect a business that is viable, that has the potential of being able to pay back a debt if it obtains it, and that they have the cash flow to do this. So, saving taxes is admirable, but if you have a short-term view on your business, or at least on the financing needs of your business, that may work out. But if you're looking to grow your business and you're going to have to eventually present this to a lender, then make sure that it is accurate.
Wow, I think that could be a whole nother conversation on that last piece in terms of what you put on your tax returns versus your financial statements. Because again, so many business, particularly small business owners, that's kind of how they're, doing a number of things. They're getting their financials when they ultimately are preparing taxes or what have you. And so that's definitely a whole other conversation. Well, we are getting ready. We're running close on time here. We want to certainly wrap up by noon. But first, I want to thank Randy as well as Cara for sharing their perspectives. And with that, want to maybe bring back my partner in crime here, Larry Twill, as we get ready to just close out and see if Larry, if anything you would like to say to our participants, those that are on here, as well as those that are watching perhaps via the live stream on either YouTube or Facebook. But so while maybe we wrap up there, want to just be sure to share with you the next week's topics, because this was touched on earlier, I think in the financial segment as well as in the keynote, and that is about innovation and pivoting. And so as we talk about that, again, there's no better start in talking about innovation than having Anuja Solnokar from Steer Technologies. And so Anuja's firm is behind self-driving technologies that will self-park your vehicle and so forth. And so she truly is at the forefront of innovation and technology. And so she will kick us off next week. And then we're going to have 3 sessions actually following Anuja, and then we're going to talk about pivoting. We're going to do this with a conversation, when to pivot and how to do it. And so we'll have Mohammed Hadasushit from Unleashed Technologies. And then we're going to also have with us, Mohammed's going to stay on, but then it's going to be joined by Philip Florenzo with the Florenzo Law Group as we talk about growth through joint ventures as well. And then I think it was Randy that touched on, or either Lisa, as we talked about marketing and understanding your particular industry segments and how they're growing or how they're changing. And so we're going to have the Post-Earn Agency with us to talk about 5 practical things you can do in terms of bringing attention to your business, kind of in a post-pandemic cycle. And so again, a great set of segments next week. We'll be back at the same time from 9:30 to 12. And so with that, again, want to thank everyone for joining. And I guess on behalf of Larry from Howard County Economic Development Authority, as well as Jennifer Jones in the County Executive's Office, want to thank all of you for joining us, as well as the other members of the committee. It's been a great group to work with, and also want to acknowledge our sponsors in KCI, as well as also Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, as well as also the African American Community Roundtable. So with that, we'll thank all of you for joining us, and that will conclude us for today.
Thanks, Leonardo.